Hello and welcome back to Craft Mansion. I'm David, and in this week's video I'll be finishing the repair work on R2-D2. Now I already have a first video where I repair the head and the body, and you can check that video up here. Now in today's video I'll be finishing the legs. Now of course, once the legs are finished, there's 2 of them, I will attach them to the whole body and the whole thing would be finished. Now of course the legs are already disassembled because I had to take them apart to work on the body. So the main thing that needs to be done to these is to make them longer and to add a lot more details. I disconnected the fan base from the wood by removing the screw and then pulled out the wood. That piece of cardboard was extra, so I removed it as well. I removed the wood from the back that was acting like a sort of spacer between the leg and the body. I got a longer wooden beam, inserted it inside the leg, and marked where the hole needed to be drilled. Now, of course, every step I'm taking with one leg, I'm taking with the other. Now, as I explained in the previous video, the legs are attached to the whole body by this rod, and this rod came out through here and of course on the other side. Since the legs need to be higher, now I have to make new holes and fit the rod up here. I used my driller and made 2 new holes. This was a bit tricky, since I needed to balance the body on just one leg, so I could then measure how long the other legs needed to be. I cut the wood to the right length, made a hole at this end, and then loosely screwed in the bolt. Like this, I could then tighten the bolt while at the right angle that the legs were supposed to be. I reinserted the wood into the old cover and hot glued everything in place. Next up, I started covering the fan base. I cut 4 strips of 5mm foam board. They were 1.5 cm wide. I used hot glue to place these right at the bottom. The top part had to be split into 2 halves to be able to fit it in. Then, I reinforced it from underneath. This side facing out is a trapezium. For crisp edges, I beveled every edge from the inside. This way, when I glued it in, no foam board was showing. The front and back have one edge going straight down. The side facing inwards is made up of 3 parts. The bottom one is a thin strip. The top one goes underneath the arch, while the middle piece fits on top of the other pieces. I glued 2 parts of foam board together and then glued these to the bottom of the larger part of the leg. Since I needed to bend some foam board, I took off one of the paper layers, creased it, and then glued it onto this piece of foam board. This forms like a joint on top of the base of the leg. Then, I closed off the other side. The last major component of the leg is this compartment thingy. It's a rectangle with semicircles on each side. So again, I bent some foam board and glued this around each side. Once finished, I glued it to the inner side of the base of the leg. So these are the 3 major parts of the bottom of the leg. There's the base, this semicircular part, and then this, what I'll call this shape. Well, basically, all the other parts go on these. Even if they're pieces of foam board, wires, foam, they all go on these. And then of course there's the mirror image of this whole thing for the other leg. The panels on the sides of the legs were cut out from 2mm EVA craft foam. There's a semicircle with another panel on top of it. Here I used contact glue. So first I covered both surfaces with it, and when it was almost dry I pressed both layers together. This goes at the center with 1 more panel at each side. On top, there's a thin trapezium. I used my heat gun to seal the foam. I cut a semicircle out of foam board for both the top and bottom of this compartment, and then everything was painted over with acrylic white paint. I even repainted the white from the original parts of the droid to have a matching shade. The white panels were finished, so then I moved on to the colored ones. There's these panels with a thicker piece in the middle, which are silver with an additional layer of craft foam sprayed in metallic blue. These go in pairs between the 2 semicircles. On both the front and the back, there's a silver rectangle. This panel is made from both foam board, which is the silver part, and craft foam, the blue part. There's one at the front and one at the back. To make metal rods, I just cut 2 parts from a broomstick and sanded the edges. Then, I glued on the semicircles of foam board on each side. These are held in place by blue panels, which sort of look like ramps. So, I formed these to fit around the broomsticks. Then, I covered the top with craft foam. I sprayed these separately and glued the ramp and foam around the broomstick. This goes on the joint part. At the top there are 2 silver circles and a structure made from rectangles. There aren't that many wires, just some brown ones. I measured the length, cut the wire, covered the ends with craft foam and colored them with silver. For a stronger grip, I glued in a piece of toothpick and then hot glued the wires in place. Since I had removed the spacers between the legs and the body, the metal rod needed to be cut shorter. Then, I put the side legs back in and screwed them in place. The front leg was the most difficult because I had to work on the floor since it couldn't be detached. I cut 4 strips like I had done for the other legs, but this time I glued them together first. Then I hot glued the base inside the rectangle. From here on out, the steps are more or less the same as for the side legs. It was just really awkward, uncomfortable, and cold on the floor. I needed this leg to be strong, since there's no wooden skeleton, so instead of making the joint circular, I had to make it more cube-like. While the other legs had 1 silver rod each, this one has 2, and they are not held on with a blue panel. The body was finished, the legs were ready, and finally I had R2-D2. I'm really proud how this turned out. I mean, this is the first time I've actually continued on someone else's work. This took about 2.5-3 weeks total to make, that's why I did the first video 2 weeks ago. And then it took 2 more weeks to put out this video for the legs, because there was a lot to do for the legs. And yes, lately I haven't been that consistent with uploads. Well, some changes are coming to the channel because I'll be a bit more busy in the future, but I'll upload a video either next Tuesday or before next Tuesday, and I'll explain in detail, well not in detail, but roughly what the changes will be. This is one of the largest builds I've ever done, and if you like this build, give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below with what you think I should do next. If you haven't subscribed already, I'll put the subscribe button over here for you, and these are some other videos from my channel over here. And until next time, this is R2-D2, I'm David, and this is the Craft Mansion.